All right. Well, God bless you. God bless you, and God keep you. Is our prayer. Today is another great day for Clergy Conversations, and I'm so happy today to have one of God's great preachers, great mentors, great friends, great teachers. One in whom so many of us look up to, who's a friend of preachers. I call him Uncle JB, but I'm so happy to have Reverend Dr. Johnnie R. Bradley, the proud pastor of the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas, and the president of Dallas Bible Theological Institute in Dallas, Texas, joining in with us today. Uncle JB, thank you so much.
Blessings be upon you. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So let me start off by just asking, as I always ask for the first question, just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us some background about your upbringing, where you've come from, and just give us a little bit about your background.
Well, I was born and raised in Pensacola, Florida, and of course attended Pensacola public schools. But I grew up uh, in somewhat of a kind of dysfunctional family. Um, a single parent household. Started at about the age of 9, and I would even say born and raised and reared, even in the Baptist church. Still remember going to church, even at the early age of 9. But I grew up in the hood, being that my parents had split. Grew up in what's known now in Pensacola, Florida, as one of the hardest projects in the northern part of Florida, and that is Pensacola Village, which in Pensacola Village, you either had to be able to defend yourself or get taken advantage of. But I was raised there in the hood, learned a lot of different things, and was an athlete. Me and my brothers, we got the opportunity, like so many, to participate in athletics, which became our outlet. My brother got a scholarship, played college football, and that's what me and my middle brother desired to do. However, um, my middle brother did not go to college, but I walked on at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. But my mom raised 6 children.
Wow.
Uh, it was hard. It was rough, man. And but the Lord blessed and kept us. And I graduated from Woodham High School. Like I said, went to University of Southern Mississippi, and um, really did not. I would say my dream evolved to play athletics. It just didn't come to fruition the way that I thought that it would. And so after about 2 years, I went back home. But mind you, before I left, my arrival on campus was a delay because when I graduated or were in the process of graduating from high school, man, I had got in trouble.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, and everybody in Pensacola knows that Pensacola Village, they used to call us the village boys, man. We
Right,
thought
right.
we were, hard, and thought that we were something special to a degree. And we did not make real good decisions. Just by the grace of God, man,
Yes, sir.
that I was able to leave uh, there and go to school. But when I came back, I had a different disposition because I had been exposed, to college life, athletics, and met people from around the country.
Yes, sir.
And so, but even in the midst of that trouble, I was called to preach. I did not want to preach.
Yes, sir.
I just didn't want to do it. So when I went to school, came back home. I didn't go back to my home church. I joined a non-denominational church where I accepted Christ. And I guess you can see why I'm a little charismatic in my worship and everything.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But eventually went back to my home church. And that's a little bit about myself. So
Okay, so then talk to me and tell us, what were some of the lessons and how did your mom inspire you? You said you're a single parent household, mom raised 6 kids. So what were some of the things that you learned from your mom that blessed you on your journey, and even that you still utilize to this day?
discipline.
Yes, sir.
It's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make.
Mm.
It's not where you live, but it's how you conduct yourself
Yes, sir.
where you live. It's just discipline. And she emphasized over and over and over and over and over again the importance of discipline, having boundaries, guardrails, staying focused. Now, even in the midst of my mom uh, sharing this with us, she did not approve of everything that we did.
Right. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
She preached discipline. All I'm saying that we were not as disciplined as we should have been. Okay. You gotta think, man, 4 boys and 2 girls
My goodness.
in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Mm.
Not a whole lot of food, not a whole lot of clothes. And all you hear is loud music and have access to alcohol, drugs. I mean, it's just the truth.
Yes, sir.
Form of prostitution. Just, I mean, that's just where it was.
Yes, sir.
But one thing about that, when I say discipline, is that when she preached discipline, not only did she preach discipline, but the other residents, the mothers in the other households that were living out there, they preached discipline. So a village did raise a child uh, where I came from. But that's what I remember. Discipline, man. Just be disciplined. You can be whatever you want to be. Just be disciplined. Always have boundaries. So
Yes, sir.
yeah.
And so, you hit on something else that you said the village raised your siblings, and I think today in our society, the village part of the family aspect, particularly in the African American community, is gone in such a way. Like, how do you feel that? As it relates to that are we lacking that, and how can we get better at becoming that village and that family atmosphere like it was when you were growing up, or like it was even when my mom was growing up?
Well, I think that I don't think it's gone.
Hmm.
I just think that being that we have access to so many other things, we
Right.
overlook that advice and that
Yes, sir.
instruction and that insight that our neighbors or our neighbors may have. Okay, I don't think it's gone, because if it was gone, the black community wouldn't be as resilient as it is right now.
Right.
Because
Yes,
at
sir.
the end of the day, even in the midst of a pandemic, people say what they want. And yes, there are a lot of people suffering, but in our communities, we are still resilient. We are still, I would say, as vibrant and as committed as we was before we encountered whatever we encounter.
Yes,
And
sir.
so, I just think we have access to so much, and then people don't adhere to the advice of others the way they used to. Don't
Mm.
mean the advice is not there or the instruction is not there. It's just so many other things have grabbed our attention. We think that what we have learned or what we see on TV or what we have access to has better advice than what we have been getting from people in our community all the time. Those people did not have the education that we have now, but they had good theology, man,
Yes,
through
sir.
through their sayings, through those generational those things that they used to pass down from generation to generation. And so I think that we just ignored the advice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so now you say you were a walk on at a Southern Miss, and then you came back home, and then you preached your first sermon. So talk to us about your first sermon. What was your first sermon?
Well, first of all, when I got back, my pastor, the church that I joined, the
Yeah.
non-denominational church, New Covenant Christian Ministries, Pensacola, Florida, 2311 North 12th Avenue.
Yes, sir.
The address, Pastor Rosso Knight Jr. was. He didn't license me. He didn't want to license me.
Mm.
He felt that I was not ready.
Mm-hmm.
So really crushed me because for a number of years, well, I wouldn't say a number of years, probably about 3 or 4 years, he wanted me to prove that
Mm.
I was ready. And that's what I was doing, working around the church, assisting the men of the church, the deacons of the church. I raked the yards of the church. I cleaned the restrooms at the church. I vacuumed at the church Sunday. Whatever I could find my hands to do. Now, I want to say that to a degree, he may have been right, but I don't think that I could say he was right all the way. I
Mm-hmm.
disagree with the decision, but I tried to serve in the various capacities that I could. I became an
Yes, sir.
usher. I sung in the choir. I drove the pastor, if he needed help, if he had to go out of town or whatever. I just tried to make myself available because I wanted to prove that I was ready for this call that God had on my life.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
And,
so
and so, what was your first sermon?
I talked about Mephibosheth.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes,
Uh,
sir.
that God doesn't exclude anyone.
My.
That's what I talked about Mephibosheth and how he ended up rather in the land of Lodabar,
Yeah.
which is the land of no communication.
My.
Wasn't because of his actions; it was because of the actions of his grandfather.
Yeah.
Impacted his father. And then when they got into war, and of course, the nurse ran with him to
That's right.
drop, he became lame on his feet and ended up somewhere he wasn't supposed to be because he was supposed to end up being a king in that royal line,
That's right.
which says that when David became king, he said, "Is there anybody in the house of Saul that pretty much that he could be nice to?" And then, of course, Ziba the servant said that Mephibosheth is a
Yeah.
descendant of Saul. He said, "Where is he?" In the land of Lodabar, which
Load the
says
bar.
that God does not exclude.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My
Anyway,
goodness.
so,
so so when you hit on something I think is important, but I also want you to shed some more light into it. When you said that you had told your pastor you were ready to preach, but he tested you in a way to where he was saying not right now or doing all this work, but encourage a young preacher who says, I feel the call to preach, but my pastor is wanting to test me first before I'm able to stand into the pulpit. Because for some that can be discouraging. So what
yeah,
advice would you give a young preacher in that regard?
just be faithful. Well, first of all, I think that in my case, it was a control factor.
Okay.
A lot of times in if you're not careful, non-denominational churches, well, it happens in Baptist church, but sometimes the preacher wants to control people.
Mm-hmm.
The preacher has to, or the pastor has to understand it's not his job to control people. That's
Mm-hmm.
number one. It's just his job to feed, to teach, train, disciple, and lead. That's his role. Okay, because he's supposed to take oversight because the Holy Spirit has made him an overseer. It
Yes,
didn't
sir.
make him a controller. He's an overseer. He
Yes,
just
sir.
sight. Okay, and so, but I think in my case it was control. I would say to the younger preacher, to answer your question, I would just be faithful. Listen, God always prepares, no matter the age now, his preaching for the stage he's getting ready to put him on.
Mm. My goodness. My
You you
goodness.
you don't have to politic play. You don't have to uh, run games. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. What we have to realize as gospel preachers, a preacher that's just accepting his call and a preacher that has been preaching for years, whatever stage God desires for you to preach on, he will prepare you for that stage, meaning that he will make provisions for you to get to the stage.
My goodness. My goodness.
He not only prepare you, but he makes provisions for you. Look, it's biblical.
Yes, sir.
Before David became the king of Israel, what did God do? He prepared him as a
Yeah.
shepherd.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Listen, before the Apostle Paul became this great evangelist to the Gentiles, right? Because the
Yeah.
Jews rejected the Messiah. What did God do? God prepared him as a part of the Sanhedrin Council, sent him to
My,
school,
my.
allowed him to sit at the feet of Gamaliel. Listen,
Yes,
whatever
sir.
stage that God has for you to preach on, he will prepare you.
That's right.
He makes provisions for you to get to the stage. I said it in my own life. Look, I may not be as eloquent as most. I may not be as deep and may not have the alliteration as others. I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but thank God I'm a knife.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm in the drawer too, Doc.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I'll cut too. So my point is that I preached at Southwestern Seminary
Yes, sir.
in Chapel. I preached at Anderson University.
Yep.
Okay. I've led sessions at Dallas Baptist University. My point is, now you got to remember now, coming out of high school, I didn't really started reading until I graduated from high school. I
My
couldn't even
goodness.
read. I couldn't read. I've been playing catch up all of these years since I graduated.
My goodness.
But regardless of where I was, God prepared me and made the provision so that I can be able to communicate his truth or preach on the stage that he wants me on.
Mm, mm,
So I say that to the young preacher, be faithful.
mm-hmm.
Don't get discouraged because uh, God will prepare you
My goodness.
for the
My
stage with
goodness.
the provision that he wants you to preach on.
Wow. That you already blessing, but you bless me already. You blessing us because that's right. Because those who admire you and that followed you, that is true. Because you have preached at Southwestern, you conducted these workshops and you've preached like at Anderson. So when you talk about this stage, then let me ask you this, because this will help all of us as young preachers. Because you with your experience, how do we, if God prepares us for the stage, then how do we maintain our integrity while we're on the stage?
Well. I think when it comes to your integrity, your reputation, uh, first of all, the scripture says that that if we're not careful, because the book of James said we can be drawn away by our own lusts.
Yes, sir.
First of all, you have to know who you are
Right.
as a person.
Right.
Okay. You have to know your strengths and you have to know your weaknesses. And no sense of you lying to yourself. You know what you struggle with, whatever
Right.
it is. Okay. You have to know your strength, you have to know your weaknesses. Okay. And in knowing this, you have to allow people, not saying that you have a major circle, but allow people in your circle that are strong in the areas that you're weak.
Mm. Yes,
And while
Lord.
you're preparing, see, you don't need to always be around people who are like you. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be around people who are different than you, because you can't learn nothing if they like you.
Mm-hmm.
In the area that you're weak in, you need to be, have some communication, fellowship, or whatever, with somebody who's strong in that area, so you can observe how they are able to conquer that which they are struggling with, or that you are struggling with, rather, in your life. If you're the most round cookie in your circle, you don't have a circle. You ain't even got a cookie. So, and really, ministry is not about just remaining on the stage.
Yes, sir.
Let me clarify. What I mean by stage is serving,
Mm-hmm.
making a difference in the lives of people. Okay, and in doing this, everybody can't be up on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you can't be up on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be selective who you allow within a certain boundary, but
Right.
someone that will hold you accountable. When you learn who you are as a person, as a preacher, you listen, somebody that will hold you accountable, and somebody that don't mind telling you about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say to the younger preachers, the teachers, the problem is that nobody wants to be held accountable.
Mm.
That's it. No, nobody wants to be nobody wants to be wrong. Yeah, we want, okay, man, you did a good job. No, don't always tell me how good I have done, because I have not done that good.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest room of every house is the room of improvement.
My.
If you're not trying to improve and trying to live out what you preach, then you're wasting your time.
Wow.
If you serve, okay, God will always open more doors for you to serve even more,
Yes, sir.
because he's not mocked. Because whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to be a great preacher to get great opportunities. The
Yes,
devil
sir.
is a lie. I've seen guys get great opportunities and they ain't said nothing.
My.
Okay, so just serve
Yes, sir.
and try to live out who you are, and allow someone that you are accountable to be strong in the area where you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
When you know you're strong. I hope I answered your questions. I know
No,
that.
no. Oh, you did. You not only did you answer it, but you put a little more on it that was even more helpful, because I believe that to be true. What you just said, that we have to serve, and as you say, with your circle, the accountability part, and I think that's all true. So, as we're talking about preaching, you after your first sermon, how was your ministry journey? What were you? How were you growing? Were you preaching a lot? What were you doing to prepare yourself after that first sermon?
Man, I wasted 7 years.
Mm.
My pastor, where I preached my first sermon, he had already graduated from Virginia Union University.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not blaming all of this on him. I'm just saying that that he didn't push the educational
Mm-hmm.
or just push education. Okay. And for 6, 7 years, man, I was just working around the church. I was trying to find somewhere to preach, man. I had a burning, but I ain't had no learning at all.
Right.
Just couldn't hardly talk.
Right.
Reading books, what book? But I all I had is God's word. That's it. And I'm sure half the time I wasn't rightly dividing it, and it's like I wasted 7 years, but didn't really do a whole lot. It was until I met my wife. Praise the Lord. Next month we'll be married 23 years.
Amen.
God. And I met her. She was like on an extended vacation, which is what I call it, down in Pensacola, Florida. And my brother, Dr. Tyler Von Shea Hardeman, who pastors the Antioch Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida, he said, man, come over to Vacation Bible School. So they put me on program. I prayed over at Vacation Bible School, and my wife was serving as the director, like the interim director of the VBS at Antioch. And I met my wife, got my attention and everything. And then after that, started dating. And then I moved to Oklahoma.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's how, and then, and so just to sum up what I'm saying is that initially I didn't do hardly anything after I
Mm-hmm.
preached my first time, other than usher, other than singing the choir, other than did what my pastor asked me to do. I did not usurp his authority. And even though he didn't allow me to preach, he didn't allow me to teach, I was not disrespectful to him because he was my pastor. Okay. And of course, and then eventually the Lord led me back to my home church. And then when Dr. Hardeman introduced me to my wife, then we moved to Oklahoma. That's when my theological lens was open. My expositional or homiletical lens was broader because of my father-in-law, Pastor
Mm-hmm.
Hurst L. Hammonds Jr., First National Baptist Church in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Been there now 36 years.
Right.
I think
Yep.
it's 36 or 37 years. And he introduced me to books and Bible software and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do nothing to answer your question.
Right. So before I get to your relationship with your father-in-law, Pastor Hammonds, of course, one of our well-known pastors in Oklahoma City. When you talk about those 6 or 7 years, because I believe this can help us as well as preachers and pastors, is that let me ask you this question: knowing what you know now, what would you tell somebody, or even tell yourself about in those 6 7 years, even though you're being respectful to your pastor, would you still tell yourself to still do some of your own homework, even though you're not being pushed to do it? Would you tell yourself to do it,
Oh, most
knowing what you
definitely.
know now?
If I knowing what I know now, man, I would have read more books.
Mm-hmm.
Just back then, the non-denominational church, they didn't emphasize education on that level.
Right. Yes, sir.
The one I rather, and saying all of them were like that, but the one that I attended, I would tell myself read widely.
Yes, sir.
I would tell myself write. I would tell myself develop a stronger devotional life. I would
Yes, sir.
I would tell myself, whatever you do, try to draw as close as you can to God and prepare sermons, even though you won't get an opportunity to preach them as a preacher. It
Yes,
was
sir.
I felt it was dead time
Right.
because I did not take advantage of, and I was single,
Mm-hmm.
so I had time, and I just did not take advantage of it, man. So yes, I would tell myself to prepare more.
So now you're with Dr. Hammonds. So talk to us about the experience of sitting under Dr. Hammonds, learning from Dr. Hammonds, and how that took on the whole new trajectory of your ministry.
Oh my God. Oh, when I moved to Oklahoma, the Lord, man, supernaturally blessed me. I became a retail manager at Dillard's Penn Square.
All right.
And I joined First National Baptist Church, set up under my father-in-law. And he was very serious about the preaching task. So he let me preach, and I flung bad. I mean, it was so bad. It was so bad that I was just embarrassed, man. And I was just embarrassed. And the members of that church, they encouraged me. Okay, they put their arms around me, and my father-in-law, being serious about education, being serious about preaching, started giving me books. He taught me how to utilize a computer. He gave me Bible software. He turned me on to all that. Then he made sure I enrolled in Johnson Memorial Bible Institute.
Right.
The classes that's being held at the St. John Baptist Church, that's in conjunction with Oklahoma Baptist University.
Yep.
And more I went around him, the more inferior I had become, because I knew as a preacher that I was not prepared. So it caused a little tension, my insecurities, okay, my inferiority. So I tried to push back from him, and the Lord dealt with me, basically letting me know that the very thing that you are running from is what you need.
Mm. Mm.
You need what your father-in-law is trying to offer you.
Wow.
You need to read books because your vocabulary
Mm.
is very limited. I mean, you still struggle with
Right.
pronouncing words. You don't understand what a sermon is and what the components of a sermon, and you don't even know how to successfully write a paragraph.
Wow.
So why would you? I'm sorry about that. Why would you shun yourself
Mm.
from the very one that is trying to help you?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And man, when I repented and recanted everything that I had said, I started drawing close. And it's like he poured so much into me. Like I say, he enrolled me in Johnson Memorial Bible Institute, um, paid my tuition. And I had, you remember Ella Jones? Miss Ella Jones?
I do not. No, sir.
Miss Ella Jones was one of the church administration instructors. Then we had
Okay.
Dr. Cujo. You know Dr. Malcolm Cujo?
No, I didn't get a chance to meet
You
him. No, sir.
young. Now. You
Yeah.
young. Dr. Malcolm Cujo. You remember Dr. Clyde Wilburn, don't you? From St. John, don't you? He was a Christian education director at St. John, where Dr. Lawrence Kirk serves at now.
Now I do know Dr. Kirk. I don't know Dr. Wilborn though, but I do know Dr. Kirk.
Clyde Wilburn was the Christian education director. And of course, Dr. Jemison, that was when Dr.
Yep.
Jack was alive, And
Right.
so he was in Johnson Memorial Bible Institute,
Right.
man,
Yes, sir.
week in and week out, week in and week out. And my father-in-law had poured so much in me that, I mean, it just created a passion
Yes, sir.
for learning. And so one weekend when he told me that he was going to Texas to help a friend of his, I just asked him, I said, because I was still drawing close. I said, can I come with you? And we came to Mesquite. And that's how I met Dr. Terry M. Turner
Oh yeah. Yes,
at the
sir.
Mesquite Friendship Baptist Church, and they were building a new church in Mesquite over on Frank
My.
Trip, and I would help them because my father-in-law came down there to lay bricks, and I was just a laborer, and I just worked. Came down a couple times, just worked, and through that meeting, Dr. Turner had asked me to be his youth pastor at Mesquite Friendship.
Wow. Wow.
So, like I said, through though, drawing close to my father-in-law and just serving. Remember I said,
yes, sir,
that if you just draw close and prepare, God will give the provision.
My goodness.
That will be able to put you on the stage where he wants you to preach it.
My goodness. So then talk to me then about not just your relationship with Dr. Hammons as pastor and preacher, but also father and son.
Oh man, I just have countless stories. He's the father that I never had.
Wow.
And still is.
Yes, sir.
He sacrificed so much to invest in me. And not just because I'm his son-in-law, because he sensed that I was God's preacher.
Yes, sir.
And as my father, because see, he poured into the other preachers at his church too.
Right.
This what he gave me. I wasn't just the only one getting it.
Absolutely.
But he, from giving advice, from teaching me what a man is supposed to be, how a man is supposed to treat his wife, how a man is supposed to fend for his children. Just the encouragement, the prayers, just as a father.
Right.
I'm indebted for the rest of my life to this man. I'm indebted because of what he poured into me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a blessing and a testimony to hear that. And so now you're at Mesquite Friendship as youth pastor with Dr. Terry Turner, who's now the pastor of Marcellus Avenue Baptist Church in Dallas. But talk to us about that experience.
Ooh, man. It was a
I mean, Terry White is at Marcellus Avenue. My fault, not Terry Turner. I got them mixed up. Terry White's at Marcellus Avenue. Dr. Turner's still at Mesquite Friendship.
Friendship, yeah. It was a fascinating experience. Dr. Terry Turner is a masterful administrator.
Yes, sir.
Christian education, discipleship, men's ministry. He taught me the role of the pastor all over again in the local church, as far as being hands-on and being able to delegate at times. Just the way he shapes ministry, the way he develops programs, the way he builds ministry from the ground up. I walked with him up close and assisted him for a little bit over 5 years. And I learned what I learned in 5 years, man. Compiled with what I got from my father-in-law. It'll take me for the rest of my life to unpack.
My goodness.
Now, that does not mean that we've agreed on everything. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, and I, running here. But at the end of the day, the plane the route that God gave me have done so much internally and manifest a lot externally. So I'm the better that I went to Mesquite Friendship, and I learned ministry as being an administrator, as the youth and children's pastor there, and the church boomed in 5 years.
Yes, sir.
Our youth and children's department grew from like 45 to like over 500
Wow.
in
Wow.
5 years. We grew so that I mean, we didn't have no room, so of course they built a new church over
Wow.
a U.S. Highway, and a lot of the programs that the Lord allowed us to work on, they still utilizing them today.
That's wow, that's amazing. And Dr. Turner is one of the great preachers and pastors and just people that you can ever meet with his advice. Because when I used to go to Southwestern, sometimes I would run into him when he would be drinking coffee in the student center. We just sit down and talk, and I just text him. He's always giving me that advice. But let me ask you this question. You talked about serving as a youth pastor. You talked about going from 45 to 500 because there may be somebody watching who is a youth pastor who's trying to do all these programs, trying to do this, trying to do that to be engaging, and they still necessarily find it frustrating not to be able to have youth come to the church. So what advice would you give a youth pastor who may be discouraged, a youth and young adult pastor who may feel discouraged and may feel like just want to throw in the towel because they're not really feeling like they're seeing the fruits of their labor?
Well, two things. Number one, God knows where you are.
Right.
You got to believe the Bible. The Bible is true
Right.
because Joseph told his brothers that pretty much what you meant for evil, what you was trying to do to me, what you conspired. He said, but it was God, divine sovereignty, that sent me ahead to save what? A lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
People that was going to be dependent upon the Egyptians during the time of famine. So, which says that God knew where he was. God knew his brother was going to do that to him. God knew his brother was going to put him in the pit. God knew they was going to sell him into slavery. God knew that Potiphar's wife was going to lie on him. So I say to that youth pastor, God knows where you are. Just be faithful, okay? Just develop your plans. Just prepare, okay? And remember with assurance that God knows where you are. The other thing is this, is that make sure that you are sincere while being the youth pastor.
Wow. Yes, sir.
See, because some people just want to get a youth pastor title so that they can hurry up and run and to be pastor.
Mm.
Listen, I didn't try to leave Mesquite Friendship. How I ended up at Shiloh as a preacher that was there serving with us at Mesquite Friendship. He knew people at Shiloh. He said that the church was vacant. He said, man, send your resume over there and at least you can just go preach. I said, man, I ain't going over there. Listen, Pastor Raymond Perry, Trinity Friendship Baptist Church, badgered me for 3 months to send my resume, and I would not send it. And then when I did send it, after the 3 months, my resume arrived there on the last day that they would. And then they called me for an interview.
Wow.
I didn't want to leave. I was content where I was because I had done as well in ministry as I had ever done. So I was okay.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. And I like what you say, talking about God knows where you are and have a sincere heart for ministry. And I was about to ask the question, but you already spearheaded a little bit about your experience and how you got to Shiloh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's how I got there. And I'm still on the honeymoon. It's almost 15 years later.
and that's what I want to get to. I want to let everybody that's watching know Uncle JB gave me one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever heard in my life. Because Uncle JB told me this. He said, if you're faithful, love the people, do your assignment, and preach, teach, and serve, you'll still be on the honeymoon. And Uncle JB told me this. He said, I didn't when I got to Shiloh, I didn't start out full time. But this is what you told me, and I've never forgot. You said, but I was faithful, I served, I loved, and I did my assignment, and I became full time. And that's where I want you to really talk to us as young pastors, as new pastors, because I mean, sometimes we may get a spot, and it may not look necessarily glamorous, and then sometimes you can feel that frustration, and then you say, okay, I'm ready to jet. But encourage us now, as I'm asking you this question. Talk to us about longevity.
Man, listen, no matter where you go, it ain't gonna be what you're looking for. No
Right.
matter. Look, look, we're married,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody put on a face when you date. You understand what I'm saying? Listen, you don't find out who you married, or she doesn't find out who she's married until the vows
Mm,
have been shared
mm.
and you start living together. That's when you find out what you got.
Wow.
You ain't got to say, "Man, I say it for you," but it's the truth. And the thing is that when I got to Shiloh, you got to remember, it was 20-some members,
Right. Mm-hmm.
small building in the shadows of Golden Gate. Okay, and I want to insert something that you hit on. Uh, I gave myself full time to the church, but I did not get full time salary.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same route I took at Mesquite Friendship Baptist Church. You see, at Mesquite, by this time, we had over 2,000 members. Okay. When I first went to Mesquite as a youth pastor, I was only making $180 a week.
Yes, sir.
And it rose to a full time salary.
Yes, sir.
When I went to Shiloh, what I was given was less than what I was getting from Mesquite, but God told me to go to Shiloh.
Yes, sir.
And that's all the church could afford. And I shared with our deacon brethren these words, that when the church grows, I'm asking that you would grow me.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on. Okay. And so served, loved the people, taught, preached, made myself available. And that small group became a larger group.
Mm.
That larger group, 100 became 200. Then the 200 became 300. And the 300 became 400. Okay. And the 400 went over 400, almost knocking on the door 500 people.
Right.
So much so that we couldn't stay in the shadows of Golden Gate anymore. God had another facility for
That's
us
right.
that we purchased on Illinois. So when I went there, okay, I went there because God sent me there. And I served, as you said, I preached, I taught to the best of my ability, and I encouraged people. And the church began to grow. Now, mind you, when I got there, it looked one way.
Mm-hmm.
But even during the pandemic, it looks different today. So if you thinking that something is or a ministry assignment is going to be what you want it to be going through the door, you're deceiving yourself. You will never go to a church, and that church, no matter how large or how small it is, it will be what you want it to be on day one.
Mm-hmm.
That church is ingrained with that former pastor's personality, how they did things, especially if he's been serving there for a number of years. But the key to longevity is being faithful. The key to longevity is serving. Make yourself available to the people. The key to longevity is being prayerful. The key to longevity, okay, is loving the people that God has given you. Oh yeah, I'm still on the honeymoon. I'm still on the honeymoon. We still celebrate. Yeah, yeah. Hey, look, and I'm not looking to go anywhere.
Right.
That's not everybody's. Call. I know people switch assignments, but we're still on the honeymoon, and what I needed to survive, to be compensated with, the church honored their commitment to me, and I honor my commitment to the church, and that's how you can stay there. That's how longevity can occur.
Well, that's awesome as well. So when you first got to Shiloh and you going through your first pastorate, what were those early years like when it comes to like, how did you approach the preaching, the teaching moment, the administrative moment? How do you approach all of these different hats when you first came to a church? As you said, well, just 20 members, but of course it grew. But talk to us about those early years.
Well, the first thing I had to do is realize that Shiloh was not Mesquite Friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I think that initially I was saying how I was going to change this and do this and do that. I had to realize that where God has placed me will not be like the church I came from serving on staff. That's number one. Number two, Shiloh is over 100 years old. Mesquite Friendship is only like 30 years old.
Right.
My pastor had planted Mesquite Friendship. Okay, so he could change that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my former pastor, but he could change different things. Okay, and so I had to realize that, and I also had to realize that I could not get caught up with what was occurring around me, the noise that was around me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make as pastors when we get called to a church is try to move the fence and don't know why it was put there.
Mm. Mm.
You go in and try to move that fence you want to, and you don't know why that fence was put there. You're asking for problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to realize that. Then after realizing that, I have to see where we was as far as demographic wise as a church, the age of the people that was there. What was the length of their membership? Being a part of the Shiloh Church. Do they live in the area or do they drive in? Is our church attractive? Can people view our church from where we are? Or do people have to struggle to get to our church? They have to really want to come to our church, accessibility, things of that nature. So you have to evaluate that as well. And then you have to, under the leading of the Holy Spirit, put a vision together,
Mm-hmm.
a vision plan together, and realize after you put it together that you will not be able to check off everything overnight.
Mm-hmm.
If you constantly hop churches, okay, you will never be able to see any of the dreams, the vision, the goals that God give you manifest.
Mm-hmm.
It comes a time where you can't keep, switching churches, because you don't agree or because you have a problem or two. Then maybe it's not the church, it might be you.
Mm.
And that's what you have to do as a new incoming pastor. You have to be careful. You got to be very, very careful. Don't move too quick. Be prayerful. Change what's a necessity. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. But be very careful. Don't move that fence too quick, and you don't know why that fence was put there.
Right.
Because if you move that fence, you might go along with that fence.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's and so as you're and so now as you continue to go forward at Shiloh, then talk to us then about how did the transition come from where you were at the first building to that new building. You know, as we talk about, you know, preaching and teaching and growing the membership, you know, doing these things, how it grew the membership, but also how the Lord was able to make a transition himself, as you said, not moving the fence too quick, but letting the Lord do it. So just talk to us about that.
Man, it wasn't easy.
Right.
I didn't have a major issue for transitioning to Illinois, but there was some major concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to be very strategic,
Mm-hmm.
methodical. Um, with looking at our church budget and where we was, how we were growing, and the fiscal affairs of the church as well. But as the pastor, I had to um, just evaluate, and then I had to trust God. That's what it came down to, because immediately, okay, immediately uh, after we said we was going to do this, our budget tripled,
Mm.
and not only did our budget triple, but our payroll tripled,
Right.
because what we was going to need to be able to man that facility.
Right.
And so it was different. Now, when we first went in, everybody was excited. Oh, praise! We celebrated, and then after about 3 months, man, it seemed like we was in a museum. I was like, look, man, where the people at, man? Great, man. Because we have a nice size sanctuary.
That's right. That's right.
Man, that excitement wore off, man. It wasn't nobody. But um, even through that, you still have to stay on task
Mm-hmm.
and trust that it was God that
Right.
led you where you are. So I say to a pastor that's transitioning and you are moving, make sure it's God,
Mm-hmm.
and be prepared for the increase of budget, maybe increase the salaries. You got different monsters, property tax, all that goes
Right.
into it. But at the same time, if God guided you there, God will provide for you there.
Yes, sir. Yes,
It's,
sir.
I know that
Yes, sir.
simple. It's the truth.
Yes, sir.
True.
But
So
no, that's very helpful. Like I said, I remember the old church, and then I remember the church where Shiloh is now. It's a beautiful church. Like I said, Uncle JB was kind of let me preach one year there. That was one of my favorite preaching moments, because I remember walking into the church during Sunday school, and Shiloh was going in Sunday school, and I was like, oh, okay. Because me and Jerome was sitting in the back, and I told Jerome, I said, y'all go in on Sunday school. I'm like, and that's where I want to get. And so then when the preaching moment came that Sunday, I mean, it was phenomenal. I've never forgotten preaching at Shiloh that Sunday morning. So, and that's where I want to get to now, is asking that question when it comes to, because a new pastor may come to a church that's not lively, that's not vibrant, and it may discourage them because they're used to that, because before they were a pastor, they were at a church that was vibrant. They were serving at a church that was vibrant, that was lively. So now they get to a church that's not vibrant, that's not lively, that's not shouting, that's not, you know, having a whole lot of hoopla. It may discourage them. It may, you know, but how, from your experience, help us on how does a pastor not allow that to discourage him, but that he keeps on preaching and just let the Lord do it?
Well, upon candidating for a church, you already know the dynamics, or let's just say the most obvious dynamics of that church. I think it's unfair to accept a church that is a traditional anthem hymn type of church and then try to cold turkey the church. No.
Right.
No. My mom always taught me it's not what you do, it's how you do it. When I first went to Shiloh, they were more hymns. They was, you know, sing some songs that was progressive, but it was more hymns, more traditional anthem type of flavor. But that was predicated upon the minister of music, the gifts and the talents that minister of music had. So if God is leading you to that church, if you give it time, he's going to shape that church to fit your personality.
Right.
Because you got to remember that that church is going to take on the personality of the pastor.
Right.
Or how can I put it? Or the church takes on the personality of the visible leader. Now, if that leader is reflecting Christ and he imitates Christ, I mean, that group of people is going to follow.
Right.
Not trying to, I know you got some women pastors. It doesn't matter, just a pastor, period. You know, if that individual, okay, is imitating Christ, reflecting Christ's likeness, with time, that church will emerge. But you can't change that church overnight.
Yes, sir.
You just can't do it.
Yes, sir.
You got to wait. You got to be patient. Listen, you got to learn some hymns. Just learn them.
Yes, sir.
You know, learn God me, oh thy great Jehovah,
Yes,
and learn how to lead
it. Right. Yes, sir.
Everybody ain't gonna be a singer, but make a joyful noise when you lead it. At least, you know.
Right.
Why? Because the Lord has led you to this church. Okay. And you know, embrace that culture, taking your time, and then making, you know, a decision by decision, you know, one decision at a time. Okay, not creating no big wave, one decision at a time. And that church, you see, when people look at the Shiloh church now, they say, man, y'all do it. But it wasn't like that when I came.
Right.
The Lord led me to lead the church, to make some changes. And eventually it evolved. You know, because in Mesquite, we used to get down over there, man.
Yes, sir.
And then when I came, but that was just the worship style of Shiloh at that time.
Right.
There's nothing against Shiloh. There was just, and so we were running over in Mesquite, and then when we get to Shiloh, I was like, wow, okay.
Right.
So I had to learn some 100s. I had to learn how to meter a hymn.
Right.
Okay. I had to get with the mission statement, you know, quoting the church covenant, you know. And today I'm the richer because I did.
Right.
You know, and so you know, if you accepted to lead that church with that type of worship style, then you have to embrace it, and then eventually it will evolve. That's my advice.
Yes, sir. And so, and then I want to segue to this, because anybody that knows you, knows Uncle JB knows Uncle JB loves preaching. Let me just say that he loves preaching, and
Yes, sir.
so and this is where I really want to also get, because you've been so helpful to all of us who look up to you in the preaching aspect, in the preaching realm, because you take it so seriously. So talk to us about preaching. Um, talk to us about what encourages you about preaching, what discourages you about preaching, but more than anything, talk to us about the importance of loving to preach and giving preaching all that you have.
Well, the Apostle Paul said it well. Woe if me if I
Right,
preach not the gospel. And if God has given you that sacred task of preaching, you should give preaching all you have. That
right,
is inclusive of preparation, reading, writing. Okay, um, and that is, and some people don't look at it like this, but that's fine. That's inclusive of going to school.
right.
Some of us needed to go to school. Everybody is not uh, disciplined to the point where they can teach themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We could teach ourselves some things, but when it comes to training and shaping messages and developing, and even that person that does not enter a seminary, the book that they read, they're still being taught and trained as well.
Right,
You give it everything you have by preparing, by by reading widely, by being more prayerful, and by realizing, as John R.W. Stott said in his book In Between Two Worlds, realizing that you're between God and the people.
my goodness, my goodness, my
You're,
goodness.
you're suspended between God and the and as being suspended between God and the people, you have a responsibility, okay, to share with the people what God had said through his inerrant word. As Philip Brooks would say, it's truth through your personality. Truth
My
through your
goodness.
personality. Not like anybody else.
Mm.
It's truth through your personality. Why? Because God has set aside a certain group of people he wants you to preach to.
Yeah.
He called you to preach. He's prepared a stage for you to preach on. I don't care what kind of voice you got. I don't care if you can sing. I don't care if you just a lecturer, you're textual, topical, expositional. We won't get into the rest of the match about, what type of preaching.
Right.
It's temporaneous, or however you choose to shape it. Listen, if he called you to preach, he has prepared a stage for you to preach on and a people for you to preach to. So prepare yourself. Be serious about the sacred task. Why? Because you're going to give an account.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you're going to give an account. Uh, Along with the preparation, and when it comes to preaching, the other thing I want to hit on quickly is don't lose your family in the midst of saying you're on assignment for God.
Mm.
Yeah. A lot of brethren have lost their families and say that this is what God called me to do. I'm just going to listen. God's work will never cause you to lose your family through the work.
Mm.
Let me say it again. God's work will never cause you to lose your family. Or let me say it like this, because of the work.
Mm.
Every individual that God used that had a family, okay, it wasn't because of the work.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
No, 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 no. You can't lose your family because listen, if the preacher doesn't change you,
Wow.
then how's it going to change the people who you're preaching to?
My goodness. My goodness.
And then it behooves the preacher not to lose his family in the midst of the sacred task, but cause people to question the sacredness of the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
No. Prepare, but don't lose your family. Don't you lose your family, preacher. Your children need you. Your wife needs you.
Mm.
And look, and you can't be doing all this growing and your spouse ain't growing.
Wow. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
If you reading the book, try to get your wife to read one too.
Yes, sir.
If you in school, why can't your wife go to school?
Mm.
You can't be doing all the growing and she ain't growing.
Well, my goodness. My goodness.
I mean, don't try to blame it on where she might want to act like she want to preach. Man, go on with that. Look, allow her to grow too.
Yes, sir.
Because if she want to preach, you ain't gonna be able to stop her. You ain't heard what I said. I'm saying if she want to preach, you ain't gonna be able to stop her. I said it. Yeah, you ain't gonna be able to stop her. My wife ain't a preacher, but I made sure that as I was growing, that my wife was growing too. I didn't disqualify her from going to school because I went to school. No, your wife needs to grow as well. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's my little bit. I'm done. That's a
No,
preacher.
no. Keep going because I was gonna hit right on family. You just hit on it. So keep going. Keep going. Well,
Yeah,
this is helpful. Keep going.
you can't lose your family. Your family is dependent on you. Your family needs you,
Mm-hmm.
and don't do your children like that. Don't do your wife like that. If God has called you, or do your spouse like that. If God has called you to this sacred task, he's first and foremost called you to keep your family together.
Yeah.
And that's the role. It's the role of the preacher. So, but it's very serious task, and it's something that we should take seriously. Every time we mount the pulpit, every time we stand behind the sacred desk, we should have done our best in preparation. I know some people have more time to prepare than others, and some have full-time pastoring and some work job. Listen, all I'm saying is do the best you can. There's no secret formula to sitting in the seat and taking time to prepare. You've got to sit down and you've got to read and reread and read. I think it's G. Campbell Morgan that said that before you even deal with a text, you ought to read it and reread it like 50 to 60 times.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and after you read and reread it, the text, you look at the historical context, and after looking at the historical context, after you can compare the text, reading and rereading it, you look at the author's original intent. Okay. And then after the author's original intent, you look at context, chapter before, chapter after. Then after the context, you analyze the parts of speech, nouns, verbs, predicates, adverbs, and you analyze in the parts of speech. And then you look at the grammar, of course, Old Testament, Hebrew, New Testament, Greek, looking at a little word study. And then the last part of it, after you've done your work, you observe. That's an acronym called Chicago. Yeah. Compare the text, read and reread the text, the historical context, author's original intent. You analyze the parts of speech. No, I'm sorry. Compare the text, historical context, author's original intent. then context, then you analyze the parts of speech, all right, then the grammar, and then your personal observations.
Wow. You helping us so much tonight. I just want to let you know you helping us so much because, and it's amazing you said that because I remember, because, and this is why I asked Uncle JB about preaching because and how you always invest in us. And I want to tell you, like I always tell you, thank you for investing in us because you invite us on Zoom calls to learn about preaching. You send me emails about preparation process, about what you just said. You send me PowerPoint slides
Oh,
that
yeah.
I still have to this day about. So that's why I'm saying I thank you for investing in us. And that's where I also want to ask you because I know you've been such a friend to us. Tell us as younger pastors now about not forgetting to invest in the next generation
Uh,
because somebody invested in us that we need to repay the favor.
sure, sure. Uh, my motto is no preacher left behind,
Mm,
and my motto is just to encourage the preacher, just in my limited sphere of influence. I believe in helping the preacher. I got to help the preacher. Like our preachers at our church right now, we're reading O.S. Hawkins' book together, VIP.
I need to buy it then.
It's entitled, it's a very influential person, the VIP. And it's by Dr. O.S. Hawkins. And it talks about, just to sum it up, it talks about in this book about being a good steward of your influence
Mm,
and how much influence you have and what is your role when it comes to your influence and impact, and that's what it's all about. If you can't help someone that is doing the same thing that you're doing to rise higher than you, then you have a problem.
wow. Wow.
I think it is the role of every preacher to invest in other preachers so that preacher can become a better prepared preacher than them.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to invest in another preacher
Mm-hmm.
because God used the preacher to invest in you.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And so we got to keep passing it down. And so that's why I send the information, I send books, and that's why when we do workshops at the church, um,
Yep. Yeah.
we give free books away.
That's right.
That's why we bring in noted preachers and speakers and to
Yep.
introduce to the brethren, so that they can learn how they do it because everybody is different, okay? And you can learn something from this preacher might be a blessing to you. And we've had several noted preachers at our church. I'm just praying that God will relieve us of this pandemic. I'm
I
ready
know
to
that's right.
ready, we're ready to get back at it,
I'm telling you.
from the workshop aspect
Yeah.
to learning the craft, to just being poured into. So
Absolutely.
to me, that's what it's all about. That's
I
what it's
got,
all.
and I appreciate it. I got a couple more questions. Unc, you've been so generous with your time. I appreciate it. I want to let you know how much I appreciate how generous you've been with your time today. Talk to us then about because as you said, you had a late start, 6 or 7 years. You said you feel like you wasted time, but now we all know that you've graduated. You got your earned doctorate. We've watched you educationally. You push all of us for education whether as because I remember I never will forget one time I saw Uncle JB at Langston University and we just ran into each other. We took a selfie together, and even Uncle JB said, "That's my preacher, my preacher." And I just love the fact that he called me that. But you push all of us to education. Like one of the main reasons I'm going to Anderson University now, and I even applied, was because of you, because you pushed that and installed that in me. Like you should go here because, as you said, your love for preachers
Mhm.
trickles down because you see that in us. But talk to us about the importance of education and the need for education as we preach, as we teach, and as we lead.
Oh my goodness. Education uh, is just is I put it to you like this. Education is just the gas to get the car moving.
Mm.
Education is not, because we are who we are.
Right.
Okay. In other words, we have our gifts and we have our talents and we have our abilities. And and when God gives us education, the education is just the fuel and tank
Right.
to get the engine to move it, right? I'm sorry about that.
Oh no, you good.
The education is the gas in the tank to get the car moving, the engine rolling, the belts turning, to throw that spark.
Yes, sir.
Because we are like that vehicle, you know, material. And what God does through the power of His Holy Spirit, He utilizes the educational journey to be put down,
Right.
in us, to help us to be able to move and
Absolutely.
be able to, work in different areas and serve in different capacities, okay, and be trained and refined so that we might be able to impact the lives of other people. I push education because, like I said, I started learning how to read late, and through the reading of books, through the attending of classes, okay, through the writing of papers, and the fellowship with greatest dean on this side of heaven, Dr. Mike Way at Anderson University, Clamp Divinity School.
Well, he's a great one.
Yes,
He's a great
he's a
mind.
great
He really
preacher
is.
too. He's a
Yep.
great preacher too. And so we have great preachers to come in, like the Charlie Dace, like the Ralph Douglas West, like the Brian Chappell,
Yeah.
like the Joe Gregory, and we have great preachers that they bring to Anderson, but the education helps to refine you, it helps to shape you, okay? That raw material that's there, get it to moving in the direction that it needs to go in, so that you might be able to impact the lives of other people. So I push education. I tell any preacher, everybody will not go to school,
Right.
okay? I get that, but you need to become very disciplined in your reading, in your writing, and so that you might be able to make a difference in the lives of. But I push it wholeheartedly. So I hope I
And,
answered.
oh yeah, you did. You always push it. Like I said, you always push it. So then let me ask you just a quick question before we get ready to wrap up. When we talk about reading, talk about books and literature, just encourage us on how to really build your library, or how many books a week you should read. Talk to us about building the library in reading as a preacher.
I would say to any preacher that the building of your library is very important. But today, the Bible software has made it so easy to build your library, commentaries, dictionaries, biographical, books, theology books, and so I have both. I have the hardback books, and then I have the Bible software.
Right.
I have both, and the reason I have both is because some days I don't want to look at the computer. I want to,
You want to fill the pages?
I want to hold a book in my hand. You know what I mean? And so I would say get both if you can, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it little
Right.
by little.
Right. Right.
But you got to build your library so you will always have a treasure to draw from,
Mm.
to have an opportunity to hang out with the authors,
Yes, sir.
you
Yes,
know,
sir.
with, even though John R.W. Stott, the transition. I like to hang out with him someday, and get his
Yes,
book,
sir.
So no matter who the author is. And as a preacher, you build your library so you can read widely.
Yes,
You want
sir.
to read widely. You don't just want to read theology. You don't just want to read, books on exposition or books on preaching. So sometimes you need to read about science.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to get you a subscription with Time magazine. See what the world is doing, because the preacher, got to remember, is one that has the newspaper in one hand,
In the Bible and the other.
Bible in the other hand.
Yes, sir.
So you have to know the current events. You have to know what's going on, and be able to address the issue that is occurring. So
Wow.
that's my
Well, hey, well,
elaborate.
no, I appreciate that too. Is there anything else that's on your heart that you feel led to say, that you want to say, anything that you just want, any other advice, any other wisdom you want to give us before we get ready to wrap it up?
Keep preaching, preacher, and keep preparing, and keep your family together. And remember, as I said, to wrap it all up, that if God has called you to preach, He's made a provision so that you can prepare, so you'll be ready for the stage that you preach on.
I will never forget that. Oh, also, Uncle JB, show us your book, because Uncle JB is an author. He wrote a book called The Both Sides of the Fence. So tell us about your book.
That's it. Book just talks about preaching, and the different styles of preaching, and it even highlights one of my homiletical heroes, Dr. E.K. Bailey,
That's right.
one of God's greatest preachers.
That's right.
Dr. Bailey, one of God's greatest preachers, who encouraged me when I was in Oklahoma. I came to the revival at the St. John.
Simultaneous revival.
Yes,
Yep.
sir. Yes, sir. And Dr. Bailey encouraged me. Dr. Jemison allowed me to meet Dr. Bailey. Impacted me so much, I wrote my dissertation
Wow.
about the preaching forms of Dr. E.K. Bailey.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. Well, and we love the simultaneous revival in Oklahoma
Yes, sir.
City. We miss it because we went virtual. Hopefully, and we ready to get back. That's why that's another reason we ready for this pandemic. Because we ready to get back to the simultaneous revival, the legendary meeting
Yes, sir.
that we have, as so we're grateful for that. And also, I just want you to share your information about Dallas Baptist DBTI, and also about your church. You got the floor. Share, tell those who may be in Dallas, who may be around that area, who may just be watching from abroad, that just want to look up, your church, the church, and the school.
Dallas Bible Theological Institute, is a school. We offer Bible diplomas, no matter what capacity you serve in the local church. You can come to Dallas Bible and get a diploma in exposition. You can come get a diploma in theology, which is like a 48-hour diploma. But we also included a certificate program, which is like a 2-semester program. We wanted to be able to prepare students to be able to rightly divide the word of truth, no matter where they are. Look, if you come to DBTI, trust me, you'll be able to stand on any stage and rightly divide the word of truth. And so what I want to do, our phone will let me here. These smartphones try to be too smart, man. Dallas Bible Institute.com. I'm thinking that's
okay. Hold on, let me. I'm gonna look it up, and then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put it in the comments, because you got a website, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right, yeah, I'm gonna put it in the comments right now. And now, is this on? Can somebody do this online? Do they have to right now just come to the?
Oh yeah, we got online classes. Matter of fact, we got online classes going now. I've been serving as president of this school now going on 9 years.
Okay.
And it has been a joy. It has been an awesome opportunity to serve at Dallas Bible Theological Institute. and that was formerly the D. Edwin Johnson, but we changed the name, and God has blessed us. And we have extension sites. We got 2 in Fort Worth,
Right.
and we got one down in Italy, got 2 here in the Dallas Metroplex area, and then we had one in Paris, we had one in Denison, we even got one in Pensacola, Florida, man.
Ain't that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I
Yes, sir.
told y'all Uncle JB's about education.
The DVTI is on the move, man. We still kicking, still thrive. Listen, we're not in competition. We're just trying to complement in the body of Christ, and we just want to teach people how to rightly divide God's word. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
And
And
it's in the comments as well, everybody. It's a www.dallasbibleinstitute.com, and you can go on there. You can find out more information about the school, and you can apply online for the to attend any classes that you may want. You can do that as well. Am I right, Uncle JB?
yes, sir. The quality Christian education at a wholesale price.
I know that's right. well, listen. I'm so grateful once again for you consenting to talk with me today. This has been one of the best. This has been, another great clergy conversation. It's always good to talk with you, and just we appreciate all that you've done for all of us and how much you mean to all of us. And so I want you to stay on, but I'm about to end this broadcast. But I want you to stay on just for a quick minute, if that's all right.
All right, that's cool.
All right. Well, God bless you all. Thank you. Continue to share this clergy conversation. Look up Dallas Bible Institute. Uncle JB is the proud pastor of the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, 921. Is it West Illinois Avenue?
West Illinois, in the wonderful city of Dallas, Texas.
And so we thank you so much. So God bless you and God keep you. And we look forward to seeing you next